9/11 affected everyone in some way, from security at airports to the economy. The attacks also fundamentally changed the way the Oregon Air National Guard does its job every day. On Your Side investigator Dan Tilken has the story of the local Air Guard fighter pilot who was the first to confront the threat of terrorism in our skies over the Northwest.
It seems like yesterday.
Colonel Steve Beachamp was on duty at the Portland Air Base on 9/11.
At about 6:30 in the morning, the klaxon had gone off, and I looked at the television and noticed that there was a building on fire and smoking, and looked at that, and I'm running full speed to grab my gear.
He and his wingman sat in their fully armed fighters, wondering if the first airliner into the towers was a plane gone off course. Soon, they had their answer. The F-15 pilots began trying to decide how to use their traditional training, meant for taking on Soviet bombers and fighters, against jetliners full of innocent passengers. And keep in mind, Beachamp's job when he wasn't on guard duty was as a pilot for United Airlines. Terrorists used 2 United planes to carry out their attacks. Around noon, Beachamp brought his F-15 to life. The alarm had sounded again.
Number 1, 4766.
Number 2, 4635.
This time, the F-15s would launch from PDX.
Here we go.
When the scramble horn went off, we both looked at each other, and I know for me, my heart sank, because you know that what you may have to do, although important for our national security, potentially a very unpleasant job.
Number 1, turn left heading 160.
Heading 160.
The heart was racing.
The 2 F-15s were looking for an Air China 747 flying towards the U.S.-Canadian border.
Never been defeated in combat.
Beachamp, who's a veteran of Middle East air conflicts, knows what it's like to be shot at. But this felt worse.
The last thing that I heard from our sector controller was, look for signs of duress.
Number 2, you've got the lead on the right.
Beachamp, who's a husband and father of 4, pulled his fighter as close as the jumbo jet's turbulence would allow. But he couldn't communicate with the pilots because before 9/11, military planes and commercial airliners didn't use compatible radios.
As I rejoined to his left wing, you see all these flashes coming from the side because now these people see, they're taking pictures. And here you have an armed F-15. I'm sure those passengers were a little distraught.
The F-15s escorted the jumbo jet to Vancouver, BC. It proved harmless. Beachamp and his wingman returned to Portland. With all airplanes grounded, they had the skies to themselves.
And it was just a dead quiet, and that was very eerie.
After 9/11, Beachamp left his well-paying job at United to fly for the Air Guard full-time. He, the other pilots, and the hundreds of support staff put in 10 and 12-hour days for months on end, often taking a toll on their families. In the decade that has passed, the hours have become more reasonable. The F-15s now have more sophisticated weapons and radios that allow military pilots to speak with those in commercial planes. And in a year, Colonel Beachamp will give up his title and go back to his old civilian job as a commercial pilot.
Retiring and leaving that is going to be difficult, and I'll struggle with it. But it's all good things come to an end.
But the Air Guard flies on. Dan Tilken, K2 News.
The Oregon Air Guard has 2 F-15s ready to scramble all day, every day, to intercept threats from California to Canada. According to the Air National Guard, it does 35% of the Air Force's overall missions around the world, but with only 6% of the Air Force's budget.